Hello everyone, how are you doing? In today's episode, we'll take a look at a very interesting, slightly more advanced concept, but a very important one if you want to be proficient at working with a DBMS. And today's topic is transaction. Now, what a transaction is when it comes to DBMS? A transaction is just a series of actions that a user or an application perform against the database. So from a nice language to an understandable one, these are the operations that you do against the tables. And in specific, usually these are the operations which change the data in the tables. So these are inserting of rows, deleting rows, and updating, so changing rows. And we have done that somewhat over the course of the previous episodes, but we will take a look with examples on this in today's episode. So basically, once again, a transaction, it's a series of actions. However, what it also enables you to do is it makes the database a very advanced versioning system, because every user who accesses the database and wants to change something will begin its own transaction, and this will allow multiple users to implement their changes independent of each other at the same time because of the transaction functionality. Now, what can we do basically, and how we can start a transaction? So if you followed the tutorials in the previous episodes, you have already done so, because in SQL Developer, by default, if you write a query, right, maybe with select it doesn't really matter all that much, but let's say that we wanted to take a look in the people table. Let's maybe select everything from people. So let's run it. And now let's say that we wanted to remove the guy with ID equals 2. So let's try to do it. Delete from people where ID equals 2. Now, if I run it, I see one row deleted. But now, here at the top, you have two buttons. You have either a commit or a rollback. And remember, we have modified the data, or we have executed any kind of command against this. So we have implicitly opened a transaction. So right now, what is happening is, with the default settings, this change that we have done here is only visible for us. If we were a different user who now accesses the database, they will not see the change. They will still see the row in the table. And here basically you can see that what I've just done is I have just opened a second instance of an SQL developer. I even logged in to the same database with the same user, and still, when I run the select here, I still see the row right here. So when I run this part on the left-hand side, you can see that this row is missing. Now I have two options. I can either commit a transaction, or I can roll back the transaction. So basically, commit applies the changes and, well, commits them to the sort of master version of the database. Right? So if I commit this transaction, the changes will be visible here on the right hand side also. But I can choose to roll the transaction back, and then the row will come back. So let's try to make a rollback. What I don't like is I don't like pressing these buttons. The reason being that in panic, if you have done something wrong, you can easily click the wrong one. And here, at least in SQL Developer, this one is like red or like green, and this one is red. So it's a little bit so it makes sense somehow. But I know similar programs where this is reversed, where actually commit is red for some reason and rollback is green. And then it's super easy to make a mistake. Therefore, instead of just clicking right here, I prefer just to write it. So it's much harder to make a mistake when you write it. So now we can see that a rollback has been completed. So now if we select from people, we have Adam here once again. And this is very useful, very crucial. Remember that if you work like this in a way that we currently do, A transaction will always be started for you unless you specify the options here. I think somehow different. I think you can specify something like an auto commit. I don't recommend this. If you work with a database and you want to change data in it, you should always begin a transaction. Basically, here you can choose to roll it back. Okay, now let's execute it on the right hand side so that you can see that we also have the row here. Now let's go to the right hand side and let's actually try to delete the guy once again. So where id equals 2, right? I try to delete. Here I see the deleted row, and here I don't see the deleted row. Sorry, here I don't see the deleted row. And now what I will do is, instead of saying rollback, I will say commit. And what happens if we commit? Like here, we still don't see the row, but now here, we also don't see the row. So basically, we have applied the changes to the main version of the database. And now this works like this with the default settings. Now there are some more advanced settings. We will not get into this course, that allow you to see like the different versions of it. So, but now we have tried to delete a row. Let's now try to do that other two operations, because we still have an update operation and we still have an insert operation, but they all work essentially the same way. So we are here. Let's try to insert some rows into the people table. SQL developer will actually help us a little bit. So basically let's name Joe. It would be Joe Doe with date of birth, I don't know, 11 January 2011. Favorite color, I don't know, black. Country, let's say USA. USA. Then what do we have here? Year of experience, let's say 11, let's say 1000, and some number I believe we do not have to fill. Okay, let's try to insert this. One row was inserted. Okay, that's good. Let's select everything from the people. We can see that we have the 11th person here. Okay, let's select it now on the right hand side. And we see basically what we expected is, because we did not commit the transaction, we currently do not see the results right here. So basically you have to remember that if you want all the other people to see the changes that you've done, you have to commit your transaction. So now we say not rollback, but we say commit. We execute this. We see commit completed. So here we see the person, and here we see the person. So it's good. This works as expected. Let's now take a look at an update. So basically we would like to update. Let's say that the cost of living has increased. So we say update people. And I think that's the first time in this series where we write an update. So basically the syntax is as follows. We say update and then table name, set, and now a column name you want to update. So let's say cost of living equals, and now let's say we want to increase this cost of living by 1000. So we say cost of living to retrieve the previous value plus 1000. And now we need to add a where clause. So basically where clauses work exactly the same as when with select. What I actually like to do is, before executing this, so I write this, let's say where id equals 11. Before executing this, I would like to take this and actually select star from people where id equals 11, right? So I write the same where clause and I select this first to see, okay, I will update this row. Then what I do is I make the update. And now we have made the update. Basically Control plus Enter, you execute the currently active statement. It's very important that you use Control plus Enter to execute the whole statement, because if you mark parts of your code, it's very easy to, instead of marking all the 3 lines here, mark only these 2 and then execute. And the problem will be that sometimes you can execute it without the where clause. So instead of updating just one row, you will update every row in the table. And this happens quite common. Anyways, we have updated the cost of living now to 2000. And remember, now and also if you make a disaster like this and you update all the rows, you can always choose to roll the transaction back if you have started it. And by default in SQL Developer, we have started it. Let's verify that it works by selecting on the right hand side. We still see the cost of living 1000 here, and here we see 2000. Okay, so now what we can do is we can choose to commit this transaction, and we can select once again here. Now we see that the cost of living for the 11th, the Joe Doe, so the person with 11 ID, is also 2000. So what happens now, you might ask, if we try to modify the same row with the two options, or with the two different transactions? So let's make sure. Let's select everything from right here. Let's select everything from right here. So now, what I want to do maybe, and let's stick to our Joe guy. What I want to do maybe here is I want to update the people table once again. I want to set, I don't know, years of experience, experience equals to, I don't know, 15, where ID equals 11, and I execute this, right? So we made an update. I will add a where ID equals 11 here also, so that we see only the one row, and we can see that we have now 15 years of experience. If I execute it right here, we can see that it's still 11. And now let's say that we would like to update a people table. We'd like to set years of experience, so years experience, and we would like to increase it by 1 for every row. Years experience plus 1. And I execute this part. Oops, years experience. Okay, I execute this. And what's happening now? You can see it first time in our course. Now the database is thinking. And the database is thinking because it's really waiting for this transaction to finish. Because the two transactions have come in conflict. So we have modified a row with this transaction. We have set the years of experience to 15. And we have modified the same row, the same value with this transaction. So we have these transactions came in conflict. And the database recognized, hey, I have something called lock on this row, so I cannot really allow this transaction to execute it, and I need to wait. And basically it will wait for a defined period. I currently don't remember what's the default one, I think 1 or 2 minutes. If until these 1 or 2 minutes passes, this transaction does not end, and the transaction ends, by the way, when you commit or you roll back. These are the only two options. You will get an error here if it doesn't end. If it ends, then it will try to resolve this problem. So let's currently commit this transaction right here on the left-hand side. You can see I committed, and then immediately after, we get a message that 7 rows were updated. So let's currently check the state. So here, 11, we can see years of experience is equal to 15, and what we can see here on this hand side is that it's equal to 16. Now why? It's because here on the right hand side our transaction is still open, because here we have committed, right? So now the main version of the database sees the 15 years of experience, and here we did not commit the change yet. Therefore, let's write a commit, and now here and here we see the 16. Maybe add where close also, where ID equals 11. We can see the 16 years of experience and 16 years of experience here. Because we have committed transactions, we currently do not have any transactions open. With a small remark that a select actually also opens a transaction, so we really do, but we did not apply any changes. And by the way, the mechanism that the database uses to make sure that it does not modify the same values is called a lock. I'll not get into details. There are many details or many interesting information. You can read up on it, but in this video, we'll not get into this. Actually, I would like to now go back and once again investigate a little bit the insert statement. So let's write maybe a few more examples with it. So in the course of this episode and the previous ones, we have written insert statements that use the values clause. I will actually move right now to the jobs table. I believe there in the jobs table, we have slightly fewer columns, so therefore it's easier to write these. Oops, I want to grab this and I want it to generate an insert statement for me, right? Okay, let's select what ID we have there. So there we have, let's say 4, let's here say, I don't know, CEO. Oops, not here, of course. This is a wrong way to approach this. We are supposed to give the values right here. So let's say number 4. So then the job titles will be CEO. The salary, I don't know, a big salary, like 100,000. Then they added the TTM and the other date we don't need to add because they are generated automatically. So we can write insert statements like this, right? So here we have an insert statement. We have added the 4th job, and now we can commit our transaction, right? So we can commit, and we have now this row also. We'll see it also here, right? If I run this, we also see the CEO. Okay, but this is how we can write these the queries. But there is one other way that we can write inserts, and it is basically an insert based on a select. So what we can do is, instead of writing like insert into jobs and then select value and then values and then like an array of values, we can select from a table and insert into a table. So let's say that we wanted to insert these rows for some reason once again into the same table, right? So what we can say is we can say insert into jobs, select star, or maybe not select star, because remember we have the 2 columns generated. So I will just say ID, job title, salary, and insert into jobs. It's also a good practice here to specify the columns. Select in, and now we say from jobs. And here I can run this. And basically we get an error because we have violated a unique constraint. One way we can work around it is just by coming here and saying ID plus 4 and plus 4, because this is how many rows we have in the original table. So now you see that we basically have here, instead of 1, 2, 3, and 4, we have 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? So we have the same jobs once again. And now if I run the whole thing, we can see that 4 rows were inserted. We select it, and now we see that basically we have 4 new rows that were just inserted right now. Okay, so here, if I now select it on the right hand side, you can see that I don't see the rows. I don't see the 4 additional rows, and this is because of a known fact to us that we have to commit here in order for these rows to be visible here. Okay, now once again to a delete, let's try to now delete these rows. And with a delete, you can apply any type of a word clause that you really want. So basically the syntax is delete from, and now you don't say, of course, what columns, because you don't, well, delete specific columns. We can say delete from jobs, where ID is, I don't know, higher than 4, right? Because for higher than 4, we have the duplicates. So I say this, 4 rows were deleted. Let's test it here. So here we have 4. Here I would expect 8 exactly. We have 8 rows, so we don't say the deletion, right? And now let's say that you decided, oh no, this is not what I wanted to delete. You say rollback. And now once again, here you see the 8 rows. Here you see the 8 rows. No harm done. So basically, let's try to do it once again. This that we commit. And after you commit, this is now irreversible. You will see it here, and you will see it here. Basically, the update works the exact same way, right? So if we wanted to increase, I don't know, the salary of a CEO and a manager, or let's say that we wanted to assign the salary that a CEO has to the salary of a manager. I don't know why we would do that, but let's try to do it, right? So what would you do is, and we will utilize subqueries. Basically, you would not select, you would update jobs. You'll set a salary equals to, and I will get to that later, where job title equals manager. And now for here, we will utilize our subqueries or our subquery knowledge quite smart. Basically, what you will see here is you'll retrieve, we'll select a salary where job title equals CEO. And if I run just this part, right? I need to say from jobs, of course, to specify a table. If I just set this one, this returns us 100,000. So basically what's happening is we are updating jobs. We are setting salary to a return of this, and the return of this is 100,000. And we are applying this where job title equals manager. Let's try to execute the whole thing. We can see that one row has been updated, and here we have 100,000. Here we don't see the 100,000. We can basically now commit the transaction, and now our manager earns the same as our CEO. Good job, us. So basically, this just shows you that you can do some creative things. And now let's just say that we wanted to set not only the salary, let's say to 50,000 back down, but also, I don't know what we could set. We could set once again the ID. We would want to increase it by 1 or anything else. So basically, if you want to change multiple columns, you can do it by separating the list with a comma, right? And you still add the where clause here. You do the update. Okay, here we are getting an integrity constraint violation. This is because we have an integrity constraint to another table. And if we did that, we would not have in the primary key value a value that appears in the foreign key. Therefore, we cannot really update the ID. So let's update, let's say a job title. I don't know, job title will be manager 2. And this we can do, and this will work, because first the database will find the row that has a manager job title, and then it will update it. And finally, we see one row updated, and now we don't have a manager anymore, we have a manager 2, but now we see, that's not really what we want to do. We can always just hit rollback, and our transaction has been rolled back. Okay, so basically, I hope that after this episode, you now understand the really basic concept of a transaction, but many people get it wrong. And it's very, very important that if you plan to make any changes to the database, any changes to the data, that you utilize this properly, and basically that you are aware and that what a commit and a rollback and a transaction means, and you are not confused next time somebody brings this up on a conference call. Okay, for now, I would like to thank you all for watching. I hope that after this part, you not only know what a transaction is, but you also know how to use an update, a delete, and an insert. And these form the 3 basic data manipulation language statements. Okay, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.